Chapter 428. Li Honyuan hesitated and then slipped away. What did he come here for? Well, it was purely for show. Of course, it had nothing to do with Imperial Consort Su. It was for Lu Qingdi to see. Even if he was unhappy, he would still say that he was thinking about his mother. Then, he would give Imperial Consort Su and her son a little bit of hope and then ruthlessly crush it. Even if the two of them vomited blood, it had nothing to do with a certain king of hell. Even if they knew that he was acting, so what? Li Honyuan didn't care at all. In fact, if he wanted to completely fall out with them, Li Honyuan only needed to say a word. However, they needed him and didn't dare to fall out with him. Even if they knew his true colors, even if they hated him so much that they wanted to tear him apart, they didn't dare to do anything in private. To be honest, if it wasn't for the upcoming war, Li Honyuan wouldn't care even if he completely broke the window paper now. As for whether Lu Qingdi would suspect, after all, the king of hell suddenly became obedient. Li Honyuan naturally had a way to make his father feel that it was reasonable. Even if it wasn't reasonable, he would fill in a reasonable reason. Anyway, it wasn't the first time that Lu Qingdi had exonerated his son. It could only be said that Li Honyuan's image had long been deeply ingrained in people's hearts. Especially in front of Lu Qingdi, he really pretended too well. Li Honyuan paused midway and turned to go to the Suite du Palace. Although the possibility of seeing the Imperial Noble Consort now was very small, he still wanted to go and take a look. As for whether he would attract criticism by going to the Suite du Palace for 2 days in a row, it was completely out of his consideration. Anyway, he was the king of hell. Knowing that Qin Shufei was awake and that Gong Jiu was performing acupuncture on her, Li Honyuan directly went to the inner hall and sat on the same couch as yesterday. The moment their eyes met, Li Honyuan knew that this was Qin Shufei herself. However, from her subtle expression, she probably knew that he had seen the Imperial Gui Fei. Logically speaking, Qin Shufei could accept that there was a ghost in her body because she knew that this ghost could not occupy her body. Now it was different. The Imperial Noble Consort had unintentionally controlled this body once. There might be a second or third time. This meant that there was a risk of the ghost taking over her body. Would she still be indifferent? Greetings to Imperial Concubine Shu. Li Honyuan bowed. Although Li Honyuan was a hooligan, he still had the best upbringing in his bones. He was meticulous in his appearance and perfect in his bearing. As long as he was willing, he was the best example of etiquette. No one could find any flaws in him, let alone any obvious mistakes. You may dispense with the formalities. Qin Shufei's expression was the same as before. There was nothing different about her. However, the poison this time had damaged her vitality. She looked a lot weaker. Qin Shufei looked like this on the surface, but it was hard to determine what she was thinking. After all, she had stayed in the palace for 20 to 30 years. Although she was not particularly favored, she was able to maintain her position without an heir. Her thoughts and methods were extraordinary. Controlling her emotions was a piece of cake for her. Li Honyuan's eyes were sharp, but he could not read her mind. However, Li Honyuan did not care about Qin Shufei's true thoughts. As the saying goes, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. This matter could not escape his control. Gong Jiu finished the acupuncture in his hand and stood up. Greetings to Wang Ye. Li Honyuan raised his hand. How is Imperial Concubine Shu's condition? Replying to Wang Ye. The current condition is still good. After careful recuperation, she should be able to recover 70 to 80%. Li Honyuan frowned slightly. Can't recover completely. This commoner is incompetent. In front of Li Honyuan, Gong Jiu and the others never tried to explain anything. Wang Ye's requirements are too high. Even a divine doctor would be helpless. Gong Dafu's art is outstanding. If it was not for him, Bengong would not have been able to return. To be able to recover 70 to 80% is already quite good, Qin Shufei said with a faint smile. Qin Shufei also knew that Jin Qinhuang did not really care about her. Although he would still let people do their best to treat her, he would not personally care for her. However, this was also human nature. In the end, there was no relationship between her and him. Li Honyuan did not say anything. After all, What Qin Shufei said was the truth. Wang Ye, ain't he entered the palace today? Qin Shufei did not linger on this point and changed the topic. There is nothing to hide about Princess Min Xiang and the fifth prince consort's matter. Even if Lu Chengdi gave a gag order, at most, he would not let the common people know about the follow-up. Princess Min Xiang's arrest with great fanfare and the parade through the streets. How many people saw it? And what happened to Princess Fu? To be honest, although the princess did not have any role in the fight for the throne and basically did not participate, it did not mean that these people would be completely ignored. Therefore, the Princess Fu, to some extent, was a sieve. There are not too many loopholes. Therefore, this matter could not be hidden from the fifth prince consort's family. After Qin Shufei finished listening, she looked at Li Hongyuan and smiled, but did not say anything. Obviously, in her view, this matter was Li Hongyuan's handiwork. As for the result of Lu Chengdi's punishment, she believed that she would know very soon. There was no need to inquire about anything. Li Hongyuan's main purpose was to see if he could still see his biological mother. Since he could not see her, there was nothing to say to Qin Shufei. Naturally, he prepared to leave. Nyang Nyang, rest well. I will take my leave first. Qin Shufei nodded, but hesitated. Wang Ye, please take care. Even if it's for, no matter who it is. Li Hongyuan naturally understood. Looking at the meaning, Qin Shufei did not seem to have any grudges. Nyang Nyang, rest assured, Ben Wang cherishes his life very much. After leaving the Sweet Dew Palace, Li Hongyuan was somewhat silent on the way out of the palace. Although in Mu Gonggong's eyes, he did not feel anything different. After leaving the palace, he stood in front of the carriage. Just as he was about to get in, he suddenly turned around. Have you sent word back from White Dragon Temple? Replying to your highness, Master Liaochen is not at White Dragon Temple. He went to travel again half a month ago. However, according to the abbot of White Dragon Temple, they received news that Master Liaochen will return in 3 to 5 days. Master Liaochen also said in the letter that if an esteemed guest is looking for him, they should be patient, said Ni. No matter how one looked at it, the latter part of the letter seemed to have been specially sent for Li Hongyuan. Otherwise, the abbot would not have sent Li Hongyuan's people to send back such a message. Moreover, Master Liaochen had always been elusive. Every time he traveled, he would travel for 3 to 5 months. It was common for him to travel for half a year. Now that he had returned in just half a month, it seemed like he had come back especially for Li Hongyuan. Although an E and the others did not know why their master was looking for Master Liaochen, they did not know. Li Hongyuan boarded the carriage and closed his eyes to rest. Regarding Master Liaochen, it was not easy to come to a conclusion. No one knew how old he had lived. He had a prominent reputation, but he was very low-key. However, he was a genuine senior monk, not someone who fished for fame. It was as if there was nothing in the world that he could not see through and did not know. Returning to Jin Wang Fu, Jingwan was nestled on the couch reading a book. When she heard movement, she raised her head to see Li Hongyuan coming in. She was a little surprised. Yuan, you're back so soon? It's just a trip around. It's nothing much. How long could it take? Thinking about it, it was also true. It was just a trip around. How did it go? I don't know the specifics. I was a step late, so I didn't bother to inquire. However, Fu Wang's mood is not good and can't be helped. You were deliberately a step late and went too early. Are you going to plead for leniency or not? If you plead for leniency, you'll be sullen. If you don't plead for leniency, Fu Wang will suspect that you're really cold-blooded and heartless. Wouldn't it be better to wait until the matter is settled before going? It'll be over. Jingwan had an expression that said she had already seen through him. Li Hongyuan laughed in spite of himself. He sat down next to Jingwan and pulled her into his arms, stroking her hair. Whatever Wan says, it's what it is. Towards Li Hongyuan's attitude that was like coaxing a child, Jingwan was too lazy to roll her eyes. She nestled in his arms and prepared to continue reading. That's right, Wan. In a few days, we'll go to White Dragon Temple. Go to White Dragon Temple at this time? Is there a reason? There's something I need to talk to Master Liaochen about. I'll tell you the details later. The only thing that Li Hongyuan was still hiding from Jingwan was probably his rebirth. It wasn't that he didn't want to tell her. nor was it that he couldn't tell her. It was just that, in his opinion, the time wasn't right yet. At the very least, he should wait until Wang had passed the death tribulation and everything was settled. Moreover, Li Hanyuan was a little narrow-minded. Didn't his sweetheart not tell him about her special experience? Therefore, he could only postpone any matters related to it. Just like yesterday, where her husband asked her to leave to speak with Qin Shufei alone, Jingwan didn't think much of it. Having one or two small secrets didn't mean that they didn't trust each other. However, is it alright to go to White Dragon Temple at this time? After Wan's birthday, the other country's envoys will need at least 10 days to leave the capital. Your husband is just an idle person. Everything has nothing to do with me. What problem can there be? Therefore, this was really a never-failing excuse. All right, then how long will you be staying? I'll have someone prepare some things. I'm not sure yet. If things go well, I'll probably be able to return on the same day. If it's troublesome, it'll be hard to determine the time. Just bring some things. If it takes a long time, I'll have someone send it over. He had his own courtyard in White Dragon Temple, but it was a temple after all. Even if White Dragon Temple was prosperous, it couldn't change the fact that they were poor. If possible, Li Hanyuan naturally didn't want Jingwan to suffer in the middle of winter. Jingwan was really curious about something that even the king of hell couldn't be sure about. The next day, Jingwan wore a more capable outfit, put on a cloak, and went for the appointment. She arranged to meet with the Gold Treasury's envoy at another building. It was a place where scholars often gathered. Of course, many noble ladies were willing to meet there occasionally. The environment was quiet and there were many books. Jingwan wanted to understand the Gold Treasury's culture, and the Gold Treasury's people naturally wanted to understand more about Qi Yuan, especially the envoy who was very interested in Qi Yuan's culture. Under normal circumstances, if they were alone, even if they could enter, they wouldn't be able to borrow any books. However, with Jingwan there, it was definitely different. As long as it wasn't some special books that couldn't be leaked, she could basically borrow them. In addition, that place was open and magnanimous, so it wouldn't arouse suspicion. Jingwan's carriage was more low-key. The symbol of Jin Wangfu was still the same. There were many people around her, but the people who served her were capable and the guards were also first class. When she entered the gate of the other building, Jingwan met several women. Two of them were the daughters-in-law of a certain Juan Wang's family. One of them was a county princess of the imperial family, and the other two were daughters of officials. One of them was the daughter of the Minister of Works. The man who became a first-rank official in his early 40s, in Jingwan's opinion, was definitely a capable person. Of course, his EQ was definitely high. In the officialdom, it wasn't good if your EQ couldn't keep up. When they saw Jingwan, they hurriedly greetings to Wang Fei Nyang Nyang. No need for formalities. Jingwan gathered her cloak and chuckled. It's quite unexpected to meet you on such a cold day. Several people also laughed. Isn't Wang Fei Nyang Nyang the same? Is Nyang Nyang also here to admire the plum blossoms? That's not it. We're just interested in the Gold Treasury's culture, so we made an appointment with the Gold Treasury's envoy. We didn't know about the plum blossoms in this Four Directions resort before. Chapter 429. Everyone's eyes lit up. To be honest, it was difficult for women to not be interested in those who knew something about the hidden gold, especially these noble ladies. However, they didn't dare to show their interest openly. Not only that, if they mentioned it openly, they would be reprimanded and ostracized, which was in line with the rules. Your Highness has only lived in the capital for a short period of time, so it's not surprising that you don't know about it. Speaking of which, the plum blossoms in the square courtyard can be considered a scenic spot in the capital, especially in winter. There are many people who come here to admire the flowers. Although they're mostly white plum blossoms, the quality is quite good. It's a good choice for poetry or painting. If that's the case, then I'll have to take a good look today. However, speaking of plum blossoms, I heard from my grandfather that Minister Zhong's family has the most complete variety of plum blossoms, and there are many rare and famous ones. Every winter, Miss Zhong will be able to feast her eyes. Jingwan's gaze fell on the woman in the warm yellow dress. Your Highness, you're too kind. Father does have a lot of plum blossoms, but he's really stingy. It's good enough that he'll let us see them once every 3 to 5 days. If you want to break off a branch and put in a vase, then don't even think about it. A few years ago, I secretly broke off a branch, and as a result, I was beaten in the palm of my hand and had to kneel for an hour. Every winter, my brothers and sisters want to invite good friends to a banquet to admire the plum blossoms, but they think that we're stingy. In fact, it's my father who doesn't allow it at all. He values those plum blossoms more than us, his children and grandchildren. Everyone says that the younger son is the eldest grandson, but in our family, my eldest nephew is ranked behind the plum blossoms in my father's heart. Everyone covered their mouths and laughed. However, that was the Minister of Works after all, so they naturally didn't know how to respond. Jingwan walked in unhurriedly, and these people surrounded her without any intention of leaving. Jingwan roughly understood their intentions. At least it wasn't convenient for them to say it out loud. It wasn't a shameful thing to meet the envoys of the Hidden Gold Kingdom. It wouldn't be a problem to have a few more people around. Therefore, Jingwan didn't say anything and chatted with them. They had talked about plum blossoms earlier, and now they were talking about plum blossoms. The others looked at each other. Obviously, they didn't think that Jingwan didn't know what they meant. Looking at her attitude, it was obvious that she tacitly agreed. They smiled tacitly. When it comes to raising flowers and plants, Princess Consort is the most qualified to speak. My father praised her more than once and admitted defeat, especially when he saw the borrowed Kun Fong Xiu from Lord Luo. There was a period of time when he spent all his free time in it. According to my father, it's not easy to borrow the Kun Fong Xiu from Lord Luo. If you don't quickly finish reading it and return it, don't expect to get another one. I also secretly took a look at it twice. It's really well written, and the inserts inside are also exquisite. Ms. Zhong's gaze fell on Jingwan. Her meaning couldn't be more obvious. It must be said that this woman's things wouldn't easily leave the inner residence. However, those were only her elders. Moreover, the book was taken out from Luo Peishan's hands. After leaving the inner residence, she had to return it the same way. Thus, there was no taboo. Jingwan said modestly, "If Ms. Zhong likes it, I'll give you 2 books of beauties later." That Ms. Zhong was pleasantly surprised. Influenced by her old man, although she couldn't say that she was addicted to this aspect, she indeed liked it very much. However, she was still a bit hesitant. It must be known that Jin Qin Wang Fei's Chuanxiang chart was quite popular within a certain range. It couldn't be easily obtained. Borrowing a copy to take a look was far from being comparable to the original. For people who always strive for perfection, after seeing the original, they didn't want to copy this product. It was only meticulously crafted by Her Highness. Not really. I usually have a lot of free time, and when I raise those flowers and plants, I have a habit of organizing the process and compiling it into a book. Then I'll have to thank esteemed Wang Fei. Miss Zhong's face lit up with joy. When she returned, she could show off to her father. At that time, her father would be envious. If the benefits were not enough, he would not even look at it. If the benefits were enough, he would definitely not give it to him. "You're welcome," Jingwan chuckled. What an innocent and unaffected girl. Fortunately, she was not taken by Prince Kong. Even if the marriage was delayed because of this, even if it was delayed for 1 or 2 years, it was still better than jumping into that fire pit. It must be said that Jingwan's ability in this aspect was something that other people had more or less heard about. Raising flowers and plants, although not everyone liked it very much, but for people like them, it was normal to have 1 or 2 pots on hand. At this time, they naturally asked Jingwan. Jingwan was also not stingy. She told them everything she knew and told them some tips. She didn't say much, but the people who listened benefited a lot, because they had already arranged a place. Although Jingwan was not familiar with this place, she could casually call for someone in the pavilion to lead the way. However, there was a ready-made guide now. It was naturally not suitable to be outside in the middle of winter. According to Jingwan's identity, it was not a problem to reserve a private room. Although there were many people in this kind of place, there would always be a reserved place prepared for high officials and nobles. Jingwan's privilege was more than enough. The private room here was different from the nashi room in the restaurant. It was not completely closed, but was separated by a treasure pavilion. Occasionally, there were some screens and some other decorations. It looked elegant and charming. When Jingwan saw it for the first time, she was a little surprised. The people from Songjin had already arrived. There were 3 people. Jingwan stepped forward. The people who were with her consciously went to the side. It was enough to eavesdrop. There was no need to participate. At the birthday banquet, Jingwan could be considered to be in the limelight in various senses. Therefore, when facing the envoys from Songjin, there was naturally no "who are you" situation. Greetings to Prince Consort Jin. When the 3 of them saw her, they hurriedly stood up to greet her. In Songjin, they were just officials. They were very respectful to the royal family. In front of the prince consort of Qi Yuan, they naturally did not dare to be arrogant. Greetings to the 3 envoys. Jingwan returned the greeting. Then, she took off her cloak and handed it to the servant. The 4 of them sat down. Because of a little selfish reason, I took the liberty to disturb you. I hope it didn't cause you any trouble, Jingwan said as she looked at the 3 of them. Compared to Qi Yuan, Songjin's clothing was much simpler. The embroidery was also unique. In Jingwan's opinion, it was more like a certain ethnic group in her previous life. There were no complicated accessories on their heads. Instead, they wore a square hat inlaid with gems. Moreover, they did not look very old. Even the person in charge should be less than 40 years old. As for the remaining 2, one of them had a tender face. It was unknown if he was really young or just looked young. As for the other one, based on the greeting just now, he was tall and had a darker complexion. His hands also looked rough and powerful. If he guessed correctly, he should be a military general and the kind with a high status. Princess Consort, you are too serious. Songjin's female envoys are the most leisurely when they are on diplomatic missions. The person in charge of Songjin said with a smile, there are benefits to being leisurely. Just like now, other countries don't have this blessing. The woman with a tender face next to her said. She was drinking tea with a smile. Obviously, she liked this tea very much. It was said that Sifong Villa also had a lot of good tea. The woman who might be a military general also agreed without hesitation. Jingwan also smiled. She could tell that the 3 of them were emotional people. At least, they were so when it came to non-official matters. Indeed, on such a day, it's natural to stay in a warm place and drink tea, read books, or play chess. It's the best place. Because the atmosphere at the beginning was more relaxed and cheerful, the conversation became smoother and smoother. The woman with the tender face was probably a loyal fan of Qi Yuan culture. She came here because of the books in Sifong Villa. Jingwan called for the female servant beside her and asked her to bring the woman to read the books. The remaining 3 people exchanged the customs and culture of the 2 countries. They were neither too fast nor too slow. There was a sense of joy and contentment in it. The 2 people from Songjin also realized that the princess consort of Qi Yuan seemed to be different. Logically speaking, the cultural background of the 2 countries was very different. Because of the internal problems of Songjin, women had their own way of living. For example, there were many women in Qi Yuan who were completely dependent on men. Therefore, there was nothing unacceptable about the women from Qi Yuan. On the other hand, some of the ideas of Songjin should be very impactful to the women from Qi Yuan. They should be curious, yearning, and have some deep-rooted ideas of their own. It should not be easy for them to accept it. However, this princess consort did not seem to be different at all. She accepted it well and talked cheerfully. It made them think that the princess consort in front of them was a woman from Songjin's royal family who was as ambitious as them. The 2 of them looked at each other. Obviously, they saw the same thing in each other's eyes. Chapter 430. Although Jingwan wasn't as knowledgeable as Li Hongyuan, she definitely knew a lot of things. Especially with a truly knowledgeable teacher like Li Hongyuan, she wouldn't lose to anyone when it came to discussing relevant topics. Moreover, she was the most qualified person to chat with. One would forget about the difference in status between them and be happy both physically and mentally. After half a day, not only did the hidden gold envoys feel incomparably carefree, They also had the intention of treating Jingwan as a confidant. Even the noble women of Qi Yuan who were listening in on the conversation had a new understanding of Jingwan. In fact, their deepest understanding of Jingwan was from what they had heard. Jealous woman, poisonous woman, with a heart as poisonous as snakes and scorpions. In short, there were few positive things about her. However, after a short period of interaction and careful observation as a bystander, they really couldn't see that she was very good at keeping up appearances. If it was said that her level had reached the point of perfection and most people wouldn't be able to see it, then it seemed unlikely. After all, Jin Xinwang Fei's age was there. She hadn't married into the Wang Fu for long. Jin Xinwang also didn't have any other women, and the Luo family style was also there. Without external factors, how big was the possibility of her becoming a two-faced and vicious person in such a short period of time? Thinking about it carefully, the possibility of it being a false rumor was the biggest. Wasn't there a different version of the previous incident later on? Stay away from Jin Xinwang Fei to avoid being affected? Wasn't that what mothers-in-law would say? The former was obviously for her son, to prevent her daughter-in-law from making trouble in her son's backyard. The latter was obviously for her daughter. Only virtuous and virtuous could have a better foothold in her husband's family. Wang Fei is so happy that she doesn't miss home. A low and pleasant male voice suddenly interrupted. Jingwan turned her head and saw the incomparably handsome Living Yama standing next to the Many Treasures Pavilion. Handsome and elegant, he was charming no matter how one looked at him. Jingwan smiled. Why is Wang Ye here? Then, when the others hurriedly stood up to greet her, Jingwan seemed to have realized that she had to stand up. Naturally, she had to greet after the others. This scene was a bit conspicuous. Li Hanyuan didn't feel that something was wrong at all. He took 2 steps forward and personally helped Jingwan up. You stayed in the Four Quarters Villa, leisurely and carefree. You completely forgot about this prince and this prince's estate. This prince missed you deeply, but I couldn't find you. This prince had no choice but to find you myself. His words were quite straightforward. Jingwan wanted to pinch him, but she held back. She smiled and pretended not to hear him. There were also rumors that Jin Xinwang loved his Wang Fei. Looking at the current situation, they were afraid that it wasn't groundless. After all, what kind of person was the king of hell? Everyone was very clear about it. If he didn't want to do something, no one could force him. Moreover, he didn't care about his reputation, so naturally, he wouldn't put on an act because of his reputation. Looking at Jin Xinwang's Wang Fei, the intimacy and joy when she saw Jin Xinwang was also not the least bit fake, but wasn't a bit too unreserved. In contrast, the Cang Jin's envoys were in a completely different state. They didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the way husband and wife got along. For them, this was the norm. But those husband and wife walking together, one in front and one behind, one in the back, one in the front and one in the back, one in the back, one in the front and one in the back, one in the back. In their eyes, it was a very strange thing. Husband and wife, they were the most intimate people in the world. Jin Xinwang Yi and Wang Fei Nyanyang's relationship is really good. The Cang Jin's envoys said so, appearing very sincere. Li Hanyuan was the kind of person that if you complimented him and said how good he was, he probably wouldn't even look at you. But if you said that Jingwan was good, or that their relationship as husband and wife was good, it would probably please him. Because of this, he gave the Cang Jin's envoys a look. You can choose a part of the books to take away from Qi Yuan. The Cang Jin's envoys were overjoyed. There was nothing more to be happy about than this. Although some of the books that they wanted the most probably couldn't be taken away, it didn't mean that the books that could be taken away were useless. Moreover, with a good start, there may be opportunities in the future. Seeing Li Hongyuan's actions at the birthday banquet, they didn't doubt the authenticity of his words. Many thanks to Jin Xinwang, the 3 people said in unison. Li Hongyuan nodded indifferently and turned to look at Jingwan. It's late now. Let's go back. Outside, Jingwan didn't want to brush away Li Hongyuan's face. Besides, they had been out for a long time today. It was time to go back. Listen to Wang Ye. Li Hanyuan naturally reached out to hold Jingwan's hand. Ben Wang will take his leave first, respectfully sending off Jin Xinwang Yi and Wang Fei. Wait until Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan out, put on a cloak, put on a hand warmer, and then returned to Jin Qin Wang Fu? Jingwan secretly thought that she was still too naive. According to Li Hongyuan's words, since they came to Sifangbi Mansion, it would be a pity if they didn't go and admire the blooming plum blossoms. Jingwan wanted to say, if you want to admire the plum blossoms, just say it. What's the point of saying, go home? But criticism was criticism. Jingwan quite liked this kind of opportunity to get along. Although there were a lot of plum blossoms in the Wang Fu, and Jingwan estimated that the variety and quantity should not lose to Minister Zhong's collection. But no matter how big her own home was, it was still her own home. The feeling of visiting her own home and admiring the scenery outside were two different things. Although the variety of plum blossoms here are ordinary, they are indeed well maintained. In fact, for people like Jingwan, whether they were famous or not was not important. There were a lot of flowers and plants that she would not dislike just because they were not rare and were not well known. Li Hongyuan was non-committal. Although because of his relationship with Jingwan, he was also very knowledgeable about these flowers and plants, but in his heart, he did not really like these. Jingwan also knew what Li Hongyuan was thinking, but she did not mind. No one stipulated that two people with the same mind must like the same thing. In Jingwan's view, Li Hongyuan was actually better. He was willing to change for the other party, and also willing for the other party to change himself for you. However, that kind of change was only for the two of them to get along, and not for the other party to change themselves beyond recognition. After all, if they did that, it was equivalent to becoming a completely different person. In Jingwan's view, there was no need to love the house and its crow. As long as there was no rejection, it was fine. Clearly, he did not like it that much, but he was willing to do it for the other party. What could be more touching than this? Jingwan handed the hand warmer in her hand to the servant girl, and then went down the corridor. She casually grabbed a small ball of snow and threw it at Li Hongyuan with a smile. The snowball brushed past Li Hongyuan's shoulder as it flew past. Li Hongyuan tilted his head and looked at his shoulder, then looked at Jingwan and slightly raised his eyebrows. Then, he directly took off his cloak and casually threw it out and walked towards Jingwan. Jingwan hurriedly retreated. Hey, I didn't hit you. Your Highness is a big man. Do you still want to take revenge? At such a close distance, there was only one reason why such a big man like Li Hongyuan could not hit her, and that was because she did not want to hit him. Li Hongyuan slowly grabbed a ball of snow and even pinched it a little, making the snowball hard. Looking at his actions, it seemed like he really wanted to take revenge. Jingwan hurriedly hid behind the plum trees and stood behind them. She tilted her head and smiled at Li Hongyuan, with a bit of provocation in her eyes. Li Hongyuan casually threw it out, and with a bang, it exploded on the plum tree in front of Jingwan, splashing a few pieces of ice on Jingwan's body. It was so cold that Jingwan shivered. Hey, bastard, are you serious? Jingwan moved 2 steps away and also grabbed a ball of snow. Let's fight. After that, the two of them started to play in the plum trees. Compared to Jingwan, who was dodging left and right, she was a little embarrassed. Although she wanted to avoid Li Hongyuan, she still occasionally fell on Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan was simply taking a leisurely stroll. He even looked slow, but every time he hit the target, he could accurately hit the target. Although he did not hit Jingwan once, Jingwan always had the illusion that he was just a hair away from hurting her severely. Naturally, she instinctively dodged, and without a doubt, she was even more embarrassed. Although Jingwan was embarrassed, she was smiling very happily. She had already started to sweat from running and dodging like this. Whether it was the Tibetan gold envoys or the noble ladies of Qiyuan, they all heard about the real situation of the couple who had returned home. They could not help but be curious and came to take a look. From afar, when they heard the happy voices and saw the vague figures, they felt a little complicated in their hearts. I'm not playing anymore. Ah, Yuan, you did it on purpose. Chapter 4:31. Li Hongyuan casually threw away the snowball in his hand and walked unhurriedly towards Jingwan. If I did it on purpose, you would have cried a long time ago. As he spoke, he brushed away the ice shards that had splashed on Jingwan's body. Because his hand was holding a snowball, it was very cold, so he did not touch her skin. His gaze fell on her hand, which was slightly red, and he turned back. "Why aren't you bringing your master's warm gloves over?" The so-called warm gloves were, of course, not the kind that had fingers. Although Jingwan could bring them over, those gloves were actually not very practical in the inner residence. Playing in the snow was considered to be in the category of severe frostbite, so naturally, a hand warmer could not be used. Li Honyuan took it and carefully put on Jingwan. During the process, he did not touch Jingwan at all. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan's actions. This was not the first time this had happened, so she was no longer as flattered as she was at the beginning. However, every time this happened, she could not help but feel warm in her heart. After Li Honyuan carefully helped her and tidied her cloak, Jingwan's gaze fell on his hand. Without thinking, she took her hand out of the warm gloves and grabbed him. She moved closer and stuffed their hands into the warm gloves together. She smiled but did not say a word. Li Honyuan was a little helpless. "Aren't you cold?" He felt that his hand was cold, but when he held Jingwan's hand, he felt even colder. Jingwan was speechless. Well, they were both cold, but a certain someone's hand was actually warmer than hers. Therefore, she felt that Li Hongyuan's hand was warm. She did not believe that a certain someone did not know this. Otherwise, he would have probably struggled out of her grasp the moment she grabbed his hand. Jingwan was full of smiles. "It's okay. It warms up faster this way. Let's do it together." Li Honyuan lowered his head slightly and pressed his forehead against Jingwan's. Their breaths mingled. "Yes, we'll be together. We'll be together forever." Sure enough, no matter how much time had passed, Jingwan's heart would still race every time he did this. However, she definitely couldn't be blamed for her lack of self-control. She could only blame him for being too good at flirting. Not to mention that she couldn't control herself now. Jingwan even believed that in the future, a long time in the future, as long as he treated her the same, even if her hair turned white and her teeth all fell out, she might not be able to control herself. Jingwan raised her head, closed her eyes, and smiled happily. At this moment, she even forgot that she was outside, feeling the breath of this man, and her whole mind was only him. As a voyeur, if they only had mixed feelings before, then now they were shocked to the extreme. The relationship between Jin Wang and his wife was better than what they had expected. For them, especially the noble ladies of Qi Yuan, they never lacked material things. Therefore, a husband who treated them wholeheartedly was definitely their life's hope. No matter how the man's reputation was before marriage, as long as he turned over a new leaf after marriage, he was a good man. Therefore, their subconscious view of Li Hongyuan had already changed. In the eyes of the hidden gold envoys, men didn't have any ability or power because they, women, could be the pillar of support. They could support their men. As long as they treated them wholeheartedly, then he was a good man. In any case, in the hidden gold, the status of women was very high, but in essence, it still couldn't be compared to men. As a woman, after marriage, whether it was the marrying party or the marrying party, if they did things like having an affair, they would be condemned by the public. And men, even if they were married, if they hooked up with another woman, they would also be criticized. Unless the woman was strong and had great power, otherwise, they would just divorce and not give the man any serious punishment. Therefore, the powerless, Jin Wang was enough to be a good man. The two people stood there as if there was no one else around for a while. "Go back, don't catch a cold," Li Honyuan said softly and kissed the tip of Jingwan's nose while he was at it. "In." Jingwan nodded. Li Honyuan hugged her, took his cloak, and put it on. Then he raised his hand and hugged Jingwan in his arms with the large cloak. "I'm not cold." In Jin Wang Fu, everything was the best. Feathers and so on, it was not too simple. "In, I'm afraid you'll be cold. In any case, you won't get hot, right?" Li Honyuan said in a seemingly indifferent manner. Well, Jingwan didn't say anything. Under the escort of the maidservants and guards, the two people leisurely left Sifongbi Mansion. In the eyes of outsiders, whatever Jin Wang Fei was saying, she was basically smiling the whole time. From time to time, she would turn her head to look at Jin Wang. The friendship in her eyes seemed to overflow. and Jin Wang, although his expression looked cold. But if one looked carefully, they would find that whether it was his movements or his eyes, they were all abnormally gentle. Although he didn't speak much, he was actually listening seriously. Jin Wang actually has such a side? It's really unexpected. A certain young lady in the group of noble ladies said in a daze. If they knew what kind of attitude Jin Wang had towards his wife, then the number of people who wanted to marry him would be innumerable. Miss Zhong at the side glanced at her good friend. How could she not know what she was thinking? She hooked her lips and smiled. Perhaps it's the right person, not the right thing. Perhaps Luo Wang Fei just happened to meet his eyes. That young lady turned her head to look at her. After a moment, she broke free from her trance and also smiled. Who says it's not? Perhaps it's Wang Fei Nyanyang's good fortune. However, Jin Wang had offended too many people. When a new emperor ascended the throne, this good fortune would probably come to an end. They looked at each other and didn't say anything. It was good that everyone was well aware. Returning to the Wang Fu and entering the room, Jingwan hurriedly took off the cloak on her body and changed into a new set of clothes. Soon after, just as she was about to speak with Li Honyuan, a secret report came in. The matter of Qin Shu Fei being poisoned at the 10,000 birthday banquet basically had some clues. Speaking of which, Lu Qingdi had sent people to investigate. Those people weren't good-for-nothings. So far, there wasn't any news. Instead, Li Hongyuan's people got ahead of them. In the end, it was still some people who stretched their hands too far and reached where they shouldn't. And the facts proved that Li Hongyuan's certain arrangements were indeed prescient. https:///11/11/11807/9287141. Chapter 432. Since they knew the direction of the other party's attack, there would definitely be clues if they investigated. Have you investigated it thoroughly? Li Honyuan continued to ask. Replying to your highness, we haven't completely investigated it yet. What we can confirm is that Imperial concubine Shu was accidentally injured. She wasn't the target of the person behind the scenes. The original target should be Imperial concubine Shu. That poisonous chicken also accidentally fell into the Imperial kitchen. That chicken should have entered the Imperial harem. As for whether it entered Imperial concubine Shu's palace or the person behind the scenes palace, it is still to be discussed. Speaking of which, if the mastermind behind all of this was really the Empress, then it was indeed a little unreasonable for her to have taken an overdose of rebirth. A woman who wanted to control the entire Qiyuan dynasty had no reason to not care about her own lifespan. Then, it was obvious that she, the mastermind behind all of this, had been schemed against. What was this all about? Who was the person behind the scenes? What was their purpose? Was it an enemy or a friend? However, the sickly Empress still had the energy to scheme against this and that. As expected, this kind of woman would only stop when she was completely dead. Speaking of which, it wasn't unreasonable to scheme against Imperial concubine Su. Firstly, although Imperial concubine Qin was temporarily in charge of the Imperial harem, Imperial concubine Qin was secretly in cahoots with her. Secondly, Imperial concubine Su, who was the real counterbalance to her, had fallen. Imperial concubine Su didn't seem to have done anything, and Prince Rui didn't expand, but in fact, she knew very well that this wasn't the case. After all this, she had every reason to make Imperial concubine Su fall with him. However, she didn't expect that there would be a flaw in the poisonous chicken that she had carefully raised. She didn't scheme against the person she was supposed to scheme against and her own ally. If this was known, perhaps this secret alliance would be broken. From this point of view, the Empress might be a little glad that her illness worsened. However, when she woke up and found out about everything, she would probably vomit blood. That's right, the Empress hadn't woken up yet. Has the Luo family been dealt with? This was what Li Honyuan cared about the most. Although Imperial concubine Qin was accidentally injured, Li Honyuan was still a little happy about this. However, Imperial concubine Qin's poisoning might also hurt the Imperial noble consort, so his joy was naturally infinitely reduced. The Empress wanted to shift the blame onto Luo Peishan and also targeted Jingwan. Don't forget why Li Honyuan defeated Empress Sunday. Therefore, the Empress was prepared to kill several birds with one stone. To a certain extent, she had angered Li Honyuan again. Although he had taken strict precautions and nothing happened, the Empress accidentally got herself involved, but it didn't mean that what she had done could be erased. Jingwan listened silently on the side. When they were almost done, she opened her mouth. The Empress is ambitious and has the heart, so she should be more cautious. Even if the imperial physician changed the dressing for her, even if the imperial physician was someone worthy of her trust, the Empress shouldn't have accepted it so easily. What was the reason that made her believe? Or, in addition to the imperial physician who committed suicide, is there another person that the Empress absolutely trusts? Li Honyuan was thoughtful. Based on his understanding of the Empress and his two lives, the Empress was indeed a very cautious person. Even her confidants probably couldn't gain her absolute trust. After thinking about it, there was probably only one person who could gain her absolute trust. Li Honyuan suddenly sat up straight. Go and investigate the recent movements of old Madam Sun of Dinghua Manor and the people around her in detail. Jingwan was slightly startled. Yuan, are you suspecting old Madam Sun? But is this possible? Even if old Madam Sun and the Empress weren't close, they were still mother and daughter after all. As you said, even so, she was ranked first among the people the Empress trusted the most. Or is old Madam Sun actually being used by someone? Li Honyuan looked sideways at her. Wan, don't be impatient. Old Madam Sun is actually a bit unpredictable. Li Hongyuan's words were not without reason. Take the death-free gold medallion in Jingwan's hands. It was originally in the hands of Dinghua Manor. In her previous life, Dinghua Manor didn't take it out, and since old Madam Sun knew it was there, she also didn't take it out. When Dinghua Manor was destroyed, she peacefully accepted death. No matter how she looked at it, there was something wrong with it. What she thinks, everyone may not know. Moreover, the Empress was raised by old Madam Sunday. The Empress is such a powerful person. Do you think that old Madam Sun doesn't have some ability? Chapter 433. What's the reason between Old Lady Sun and the Empress? Jingwan asked. Although he didn't understand, Li Honyuan still understood what she was referring to. Their views don't match. As far as I know, when the former Duke Ding wanted to marry the Empress into the imperial family, old Madam Sun strongly opposed it. The relationship between the husband and wife was already bad, and even worse. In the end, it was old Madam Sun who made a concession. She didn't give in to the former Duke Ding, but because the Empress made her own choice. As a result, old Madam Sun, who originally cared about her eldest daughter very much, suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. In fact, if old Lady Sun supported the Empress from the beginning to the end, then concubine Su and the others might not be the Empress's opponent at all. It's just that it's too early for old Lady Sun to cultivate her moral character, abstain from meat, and pray to Buddha. Generally, women in the harem like her rarely make such a choice. After all, she's been suppressed by others for a lifetime, and it's not easy for her to turn things around. How could she not enjoy the treatment of having the final say and give up her power without hesitation? Therefore, old Lady Sun did things that ordinary people wouldn't do, and she shouldn't be judged by common sense. However, if this matter was really done by old Lady Sun, then what was her purpose? She couldn't have killed the Empress, her biological daughter, just because the Empress was too ambitious and might bring disaster to Duke Ding's mansion and even the Sun family. To be honest, according to old Lady Sun's attitude, it really couldn't be seen that she cared much about Duke Ding's mansion. If Duke Ding's mansion was destroyed, she wouldn't even blink her eyes. This was more credible. After all, according to her relationship with Lu Qingdi, she probably wouldn't worry about the destruction of the Sun family. Li Honyuan gently stroked Jingwan's hair. Don't think too much about it. Everything has a cause and effect. We'll know when we find out the truth. It's useless to think too much now. You'll only be hurting yourself for nothing. Jingwan smiled. That's true. People like old Madam Sun and the Empress are all capable people. Small shrimps like us might not be able to play with them. It's better to stay away from them, lest we get implicated. When that time comes, we might not even know what's going on. If you're a small shrimp, then what am I? Once someone used the term "this king" in front of his beloved wife. It meant that some of his emotions had changed. You're the king of hell. What else can you be? Jingwan replied with a smile. There's a saying that it's best to enjoy the shade under a big tree. You're that towering tree, and I just need to be the one enjoying the shade. So, Your Highness, work hard. Well, you just need to be a small shrimp obediently. I'll take care of the rest. In Li Hongyuan's view, Jingwan was really not suitable to play tricks. At least not now. As she said, she had no chance of winning against those people. However, things were not settled yet. Li Hongyuan would not let Jingwan participate. This had nothing to do with her ability. He just didn't want her to be in danger. The Empress wanted to scheme against imperial concubine Su, but she directed the spearhead to the Luo family. Jingwan was naturally very angry. However, if her husband went too far at this time, some things would inevitably be exposed soon. Although Yuan didn't say it clearly, Jingwan could see that things were almost done. He didn't care whether it would be known now or not. However, as long as he didn't take the initiative to expose himself, Jingwan's heart was unwilling. Passive exposure would always bring trouble. There are some things that Yuan doesn't need to be impatient. It doesn't matter if you take it slow. Li Hongyuan naturally understood her meaning and smiled. 10 years is not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. The problem is that your husband, I, am not a gentleman. What's more, some people have touched the place that they shouldn't have touched the most. I understand what Wan is thinking. Don't worry, it's not to that extent. Although I don't care now, it's not so easy to dig out my bottom line. Okay, I was worried for nothing. Jingwan closed her eyes and leaned on Li Hongyuan as if she had no bones, pretending to be dead. Of course, and he had already tactfully retreated. In the following 3 or 4 days, Jingwan's social activities inexplicably increased. She met with the Tsang Jin's envoy again. They had a pleasant chat, and the relationship between them went further. So much so that the Tsang Jin's envoy joked with her and didn't dare to keep her for too long in case Jin Qin Wang came to the door again. For Jingwan, this kind of joke naturally didn't have any lethality. She was especially thick-skinned and showed off her affection. Then, she also teasingly asked about the other's husband. Before leaving, the Tsang Jin's envoy expressed his wish to let Jingwan join the Tsang Jin's entourage. Of course, both sides knew that this kind of thing could only be said as it was impossible. Qi Yuan was Qi Yuan. It was unknown how many years it would take before it could reach the level of the Tsang Jin. As for old Madame Sun, perhaps she hadn't found any news yet and didn't hear anything from her husband or the shadow guards. The next day, Jingwan packed up her things and followed Li Hongyuan to Bailong Temple. Li Hongyuan just went to Luqingdi and said that there were too many unlucky things recently. He wanted to go to Bailong Temple to burn incense and get rid of the bad luck. His face was almost written. Ben Wang is very annoyed. Ben Wang wants to go out and relax. Luqingdi's mouth faintly twitched. The father, didn't say that it was unlucky. He had the nerve to say this. His true feelings were so obvious. Did he think that he was blind? In the end, he waved his hand and asked him to get out. The order was to let his son burn incense and pray for him. In Jingwan's view, this was definitely a typical good father. Not only did he agree to his son's unreasonable request, but he also helped him deal with the follow-up matters so that others couldn't find an excuse to criticize him. Later, Jingwan heard from Li Hongyuan another reason why Luqingdi asked him to go to Bailong Temple. Luqingdi lit a lamp for the imperial noble consort in Bailong Temple and asked his son, Li Hongyuan, to add some incense oil to her. Jingwan still felt that it was ironic. Wan, don't worry. She won't take it seriously. If it was in the past, Li Hongyuan wouldn't say such a thing. Now, he was quite sure that no matter what Luqingdi did, whether it was affectionate or ruthless, she wouldn't be shaken at all. If they could use her to get benefits from Luqingdi, she would be very happy. Whether she'll take it seriously or not, we don't know. Let's not talk about it anymore. Should we leave today or wait until tomorrow? Let's do it today. It's so boring to stay in the capital and watch some people fight. Jingwan nodded. She had people prepare and left the capital. Li Hanyuan didn't know how to keep a low profile when he traveled. Bai Long Temple wasn't far. Even if they traveled at a normal speed, it wouldn't take much time. When they arrived at Bai Long Temple, the abbot personally led people to welcome them. When they settled down in Li Hongyuan's personal courtyard, they went to see Master Liaochen together. As the abbot, he wouldn't disturb Master Liaochen's cultivation unless it was absolutely necessary. Thus, he only led them to the outside of Master Liaochen's meditation room before taking his leave to do his own things. Although Master Liaochen was an unworldly expert, he still had the proper etiquette. He greeted the two with a benevolent smile. Jingwan hurriedly returned the greeting. Li Hanyuan didn't half-heartedly return the greeting. Master Liaochen's meditation room was very warm. It didn't have the hardships of an ascetic monk. Even so, it didn't mean that Master Liaochen wasn't devout. In Jingwan's opinion, he was old and had a Buddhist heart. There was no need for him to torment himself over such matters. No matter how eminent a monk he was still immortal. After they sat down, Master Liaochen personally poured them a cup of tea. This is wild tea from Bai Long Temple. The tea is snow water from a few years ago. I hope Prince and Princess will like it. They could smell the fragrance before they even tasted the tea. It couldn't be bad. Moreover, even if it was snow water in an era without chemical pollution, there was no need to worry that there would be anything dirty in it. Jingwan took a small sip. She couldn't help but praise the tea. Good tea, good water, and a master's skills. As long as Princess likes it. Master Liaochen smiled. If it weren't for his clothes and bald head, no one would believe that he was an unworldly expert. He was too approachable. Li Hanyuan didn't say anything, but he took 2 sips of tea. It was clear enough. The snow at Bai Long Temple is also very good. It's comparable to the peach blossoms in spring. Wan, go take a look. We can't let down the beauty. Jingwan knew that Li Hanyuan was here for business. Without another word, she got up and bid farewell. Li Hanyuan didn't waste time either. He took out the jade pendant. Master, you must recognize it. Master Liaochen nodded. So that's how it is. Chapter 434. Understanding dawned in Master Liaochen's eyes. So that's how it is. Li Hanyuan could tell from Master Liaochen's expression that he already knew the cause and effect of everything. That was why it was the easiest to deal with someone like Master Liaochen. However, there was one condition. He didn't involve himself in worldly affairs. If he did, he would become the most terrifying enemy. Even if he stood on Master Liaochen's side, as someone who was loyal to him, he wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. This was because a person like him couldn't be controlled. It didn't matter if you transmigrated or reincarnated 10 times or 100 times. All foresight and tricks would be useless in front of him. Of course, anyone with half a brain would know that this was impossible. As the saying went, some people had to pay a heavy price for divining the heaven's secrets. If someone could casually reveal or use it, that person would be sent to hell in a matter of seconds. Moreover, if one's heart was disturbed and he entered the secular world, could he still be called a master? Could that mysterious ability continue to exist? At least, Li Hanyuan trusted Master Liaochen very much and had never thought of asking him to come out of seclusion. In that case, I don't think I need to explain. Master Liaochen should know why I'm here. Master Liaochen nodded. Your Highness, you must have met the Imperial Noble Consort since you've come all the way here. What do you want? Master Liaochen was helpless against a demon king like Li Hanyuan. Therefore, he had to be careful about anything related to him. He was afraid that Master Liaochen would do something irreparable at the slightest provocation. Other than him, even Emperor Lu Cheng couldn't do anything to him, let alone make a special trip back while he was traveling. Li Hanyuan held the teacup and took 2 sips. Even though it wasn't hot, it was still misty in the winter, blurring his expression. He calmly recounted his meeting with the Imperial Noble Consort and how he knew the reason for his reincarnation. No matter how powerful Master Liaochen was, he couldn't know the details. Ben Wang is thinking right now, can I keep her? Master Liaochen sighed softly. He knew that it wasn't very possible. As the saying goes, a life for a life, and the cost was often more than the gain. Even so, there were very few people who had this kind of opportunity. According to that imperial noble consort's fate, if she only extended her son's life, even if it was just for 30 to 50 years, it would probably only affect her life for the next several lifetimes, a life full of hardships, but she definitely wouldn't end up with her soul scattered. The reality was that turning back time didn't just change one person's fate, but many people's. It could even create a completely different history. Furthermore, there was such a ruthless person like Qin Wang. Unless you were one of the gods, how could you be able to pull yourself out of this after doing such a thing? In reality, Master Liaochen didn't even know if gods and Buddhas really existed. The imperial noble consort was indeed special, but not to this extent. Moreover, this kind of thing was irreversible. Therefore, the benefits had already been obtained. How could he not pay the price? Li Honyuan had already thought of this. He didn't express anything about Master Liaochen's silence. His current state of mind was still calm. Regarding the imperial noble consort, he didn't have to do it. Then Wang doesn't care what happens in the future. As long as she lives the lifespan of a normal person in any way, it's fine. Li Honyuan paused. Otherwise, 20 years. When Li Honyuan said this, Master Liaochen actually let out a sigh of relief. It wasn't because Li Honyuan was backing down, but because his attitude showed that there was room for discussion. Wang Yi, the imperial noble consort, should have disappeared when time turned back. No matter if it was in your previous life or this life, once you've obtained benefits, she shouldn't exist anymore. The reason you can still see her is probably because her obsession is too deep. After meeting you, her obsession will definitely fade and then quickly disappear. In reality, based on her situation, no matter how strong her obsession is, being able to hold on until now is already her limit. Does Master mean that I'm powerless? If she can exchange with me, can't she exchange with others? If one isn't enough, then what about 10, 100, 1,000, or even 10,000, 100,000? Master Liaochen was most afraid of Li Hongyuan's actions. He didn't have any scruples and did whatever he wanted. Wang Yi, through the matter of the imperial noble consort, you should know that some things pay attention to karma. In order to extend the imperial noble consort's existence for 10 to 20 years, you've sacrificed millions of lives. You don't care, but have you considered Wang Fei? When Wang Fei married you, she was already connected to your life. Do you think that this kind of killing will not affect her? Li Honyuan was silent. Between the imperial noble consort and Jingwan, it was clear that he would unhesitatingly choose Jingwan. Master Liaochen also rejoiced that Qin Wang had a weakness. A moment later. But, according to Master's meaning, exchanging lives is feasible, right? Even if she's special and can't be exchanged for everything, at least part of it, right? It was clear that Li Honyuan wouldn't give up so easily. That's right. As the saying goes, monks don't lie. Master Liaochen naturally couldn't say anything that went against his heart. But this exchanging lives is different from the one between you and the imperial noble consort. Rather than saying that you're exchanging lives for the imperial noble consort, it's better to say that you're exchanging lives. Using someone else's life to replace the imperial noble consort's, letting someone else replace the imperial noble consort's fate of dissipating. However, there are two prerequisites. First, it has to be done willingly. Second, the life has to be similar to that of the imperial noble consort. The closer it is, the better the effect. Hearing this, Li Hongyuan's mind immediately flashed with Qin Shu Fei's figure. She didn't possess someone else's body, but happened to be Qin Shu Fei. Doesn't this mean that in this world, the range is too large? At least in the entire capital, their lives are the closest? Even with great Master Liaochen's temper, he felt helpless. What was this called? This was a classic example of biting the hand that fed you. It could be said that the imperial noble consort was only able to survive because Qin Shufei had taken in her. If Qin Shufei herself had rejected the imperial noble consort, the imperial noble consort would not have been able to parasitize her. But now, it was as if Mr. Donghua's kindness had not been rewarded. Master Liaochen only hesitated for a moment, but Li Hongyuan had already gotten his answer. I'll think of a way to make this happen. When the time comes, I'm afraid we'll need Master's help. Master Liaochen naturally didn't want to do something that would harm someone's life, but he couldn't completely reject this king of hell. After some deliberation, he said, Your Highness, even if Qin Shu and the imperial noble consort's lives are the closest, that's only relative. Even if you succeed, it won't take long. This humble monk suggests that Your Highness tell the imperial noble consort about this. If both parties are willing, it won't work either. Li Honyuan obviously understood what Master Liaochen meant. In his opinion, it was highly likely that his birth mother wouldn't be willing to let her know. But he didn't doubt the truth of Master Liaochen's words. Other than this, is there any other way? Yes. Set up 81 altars in Qiyuan. 81 monks will pray for blessings on each altar for 81 days. That's simple. It seemed like a large scale, but if they were spread out, it wouldn't be a problem. But wasn't a little too simple? Your Highness, this is just a prelude. What we really need is the blessing of the people. The more people there are, the better the effect. The longest it can last is perhaps until Your Highness dies of old age. https://11/11807/9353212. Please wait patiently after reporting and refresh the page. Mobile Edition. Chapter 435. Li Honyuan frowned slightly. As expected, it wouldn't be that easy. The altar could be set up in secret, but the people praying for blessings definitely couldn't be hidden. How could it be as simple as mobilizing the entire Qiyuan? Even his so-called imperial father missed his birth mother in every possible way. Sometimes, he even acted like he was crazy and didn't care about anything. However, if he really wanted to create such a big scene, it would be very difficult for him to nod his head and agree. After all, no matter if it was the imperial noble consort or Li Honyuan, there was a big prerequisite for his extreme doting. That was, it couldn't involve the Qiyuan Empire. When Lu Qingdi first met the imperial noble consort, he might have thought of forsaking the empire for the beauty, but that thought was very short-lived. After achieving his goal, it would have disappeared without a trace. In Li Hongyuan's opinion, it was harder to get thousands of people to pray for blessings than to kill thousands of people. Therefore, Li Honyuan didn't consider this option. Is there no third option? Li Honyuan asked mildly. Amitabha, Your Highness, if it's simple and doesn't cost anything, I'm afraid you'll be suspicious immediately. Master Liaochen was quite familiar with Li Hongyuan's temperament. Li Honyuan nodded, indicating that he understood. Then he picked up the jade pendant and prepared to leave. Since he'd finished his business, he naturally didn't want to face a bald old monk. No one else could be more important than his wife. This was a classic example of throwing away something after using it. Master Liaochen was starting to wonder if it was really worth it for him to come all the way here. Your Highness, please wait. This humble monk can bless this jade. You can leave it with Her Highness Consort Shu and have her carry it with her at all times. It can stabilize and nourish her soul. Although its effects are limited, this jade is the best place to nourish her soul. Li Honyuan handed the jade over. Just now, Master told this prince to ask her if there's a way to get her to come out and meet with this prince. This matter concerns Consort Qin Shu, so I can't let her pass on a message. Imperial Noble Consort. Every time she controls Imperial Noble Consort Shu's body, it consumes a lot of her energy. The damage to Imperial Noble Consort Shu was not small either. Li Honyuan sneered. If that's the case, why did Grandmaster say such useless words? It was impossible to have a proper conversation with someone like Li Honyuan. Master Liaochen held the jade in his hand, closed his eyes, and chanted for about a quarter of an hour. Then he handed it back to Li Honyuan. Get to concubine Shu. Go see her in 32 hours. Li Honyuan placed the jade pendant in front of his eyes. He didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but he felt that this piece of jade seemed to be more lustrous. Master, since this jade can nourish souls, does it mean that it is very special? People nurture jade, and jade nurtures people. If it's suitable, it can become a priceless treasure. If it's not suitable, it's just a piece of jade no matter how good it is. To put it bluntly, this piece of jade was extremely compatible with the imperial noble consort. Li Hanyuan accepted the jade and left without a trace of politeness. Jingwan was wearing thick clothes and could be said to be fully armed. She strolled around White Dragon Temple. Because she was constantly walking, she didn't feel cold. The snowy scenery of White Dragon Temple was very beautiful and spectacular. It had to be said that White Dragon Temple was a place of great feng shui. Jingwan stood on a high ground. From her current angle, she could vaguely see a section of the river below White Dragon Mountain. Because it was too far away, it didn't look much different from a wide ditch. She couldn't tell if the current was fast or slow. At this time, Jingwan was in a daze. Wan, what are you thinking about? When Li Hanyuan found her, he couldn't help but ask when he saw her like this. Jingwan turned to look at him and chuckled. I'm thinking about my first contact with Yuan. It really left a deep impression. Li Hanyuan raised his eyebrows. Wan, why don't you say it was intimate contact? It was indeed deep and memorable. As he spoke, he purposely licked his lips seductively. Jingwan narrowed her eyes. I remember that a certain someone didn't seem to have any consciousness and was in a semi-conscious state. Where did you get the impression from? How did it leave a deep impression? Could Li Hanyuan say that he didn't actually lose consciousness? Perhaps his self-control was very poor at that time, but he had all the sensations he should have and all the memories he should have. The feeling was indeed wonderful. However, this matter really couldn't be said. Jingwan was all smiles, but it was inexplicably a little dangerous. I haven't asked who your highness was calling at that time. To be able to make your highness have such a big reaction, it's really different from the person I know. Is it the white moonlight in your heart, or the cinnabar at the tip of your heart? If I say that the person I called was you, Wan, would you believe me? Jingwan snorted twice. Obviously, she didn't believe him. However, deep in her heart, there was a trace of strangeness that she didn't notice. Li Hanyuan showed a hurt expression. This husband has always only lost control in front of Wan. Jingwan didn't comment. Is it done? Li Hanyuan felt that it was a pity. In fact, he was waiting for Wan to get to the bottom of it. Although he didn't want to tell her now, whether he said it or not was one matter. Whether Wan asked or not was another matter. Every time there was a hint, Wan seemed to subconsciously avoid it, as if she was instinctively avoiding a forbidden area. Something like that. However, it's too difficult to implement. You can't reveal anything to me, okay? It would be a lie if she said that she wasn't curious. Not really. Li Hanyuan thought for a moment. I just want to do a great ceremony for her that will spread throughout the world and pray for the blessings of the people. It's not difficult. Even she felt that it was impossible. What's Wan's opinion? Create a celestial phenomenon, make the imperial noble consort a legend, the mysterious lady of the ninth heaven, and so on. If done properly, the effect will definitely be very good. https:///11/11/11/9353213. Chapter 436. Li Hanyuan pondered. It wasn't that no one had done this before. People would do anything to achieve their goals. Not only the royal family, but also the officials and nobles, and even the common people. There were countless people who used various methods, but the end result was the same. However, compared to what could be done to the imperial noble consort, those were really small. The biggest thing they could do was to change a person's fate, whether it was a newborn child or an ambitious woman who wanted to marry into the royal family. Otherwise, it was something they wanted to do or didn't want to do at certain times. These things didn't involve the common people in the world. Therefore, they didn't think of it at the moment. However, there was indeed room for improvement. Once it was done, the effect will be very good. Wan, do you have any suggestions on how to do it? There's no reason. It's not appropriate to rashly spread the news about the imperial noble consort. How about this? Jingwan explained her thoughts one by one. Of course, because it was a temporary idea, it could only be an outline. However, Jingwan believed that this matter only needed an outline or even an idea. Someone would definitely perfect it and then implement it as much as possible without leaving any future troubles. Li Hanyuan listened quietly. At this time, he was a qualified listener. When Jingwan finished speaking, Li Hanyuan took her into his arms. Wan, thank you. Jingwan looked up at him, her eyes shining. Suddenly, she kissed his chin. It was a little cold. Is there a need for thanks between us? I'm just moving my mouth. The matter still needs to be done by you. There's no need to do this for other matters, but this matter needs to be done. All right, I'll accept it, Jingwan said nonchalantly. Actually, that's your mother. That's also my mother-in-law's fault. So, she was one of them. There is no need to treat her like an outsider. Wan, you just need to listen to me, someone said rather domineeringly. Yes. There was no need to argue with him over such a small matter. I'll go find Master Liaochen later. Then, we'll go back to the capital. Or Wan, do you want to stay for a few more days? Let's go back to the capital. Business is more important. It was obvious that this matter was very important. We still need to prepare for this matter. It's not that easy to complete it, let alone a day or two. Even 10 days or half a month might not be a problem. The matter was too big, and there couldn't be any mistakes in the early stages. The work was definitely not something that could be completed in a day or two. I know, but if we stop at White Dragon Temple, it's hard to guarantee that we won't connect the two when the incident happens in the future. It might not be difficult to deal with it, so it's better to save as much trouble as possible. The snowy scenery of White Dragon Temple is not something that can be seen in a short time. Won't Wan feel regret if we leave just like that? Jingwan chuckled. I want to grow old with Yuan. There will be countless winters in the future, and there will be many opportunities. There was no doubt that Li Hanyuan was very pleased to hear this. Li Hanyuan went to find Master Liaochen. After all, he still needed Master Liaochen's help to complete this matter. In other words, he was indispensable. With him around, even if he didn't say a word, people would imagine countless things. However, as an eminent monk, it was theoretically impossible for him to participate in such a big show and deceive the world. But if a harmless deception could save countless lives, Master Liaochen would not refuse. When it came to caring for the world, there was probably no one like him. Even the people sitting on the throne were far inferior to him. At the same time, Jingwan began to prepare for the return journey. They had only just settled down, but the people below wouldn't have any objections. They didn't dare to have any. After weighing the pros and cons, Master Liaochen agreed without hesitation. When they left, Master Liaochen personally saw them off. He looked at Jingwan kindly and said something like, "You understand everything separately, but you don't understand everything together." Master Liaochen seemed very grateful to her. Jingwan was a little confused. She had no idea what was going on. She turned to Li Hanyuan, but Li Hanyuan didn't seem to have any tacit understanding at all. He didn't even give her a hint with his eyes. Just like that, Jingwan was brought into the carriage in a daze. Another jade bead appeared in her hand. It looked like a very ordinary knot with jade beads strung together. It was simple and plain, but if one looked closely, the jade beads were so bright that they didn't look like jade. This jade bead might not be as valuable as the string of Buddhist beads in her hand, but it came from Master Liaochen. There was no doubt that people would fight over it if she took it out. When they got into the carriage, Jingwan couldn't take it anymore. "What's the meaning of this, Master Liaochen? Didn't that old bald donkey say that you have an affinity with Buddhism? If that's the case, it's normal for him to give you something." Li Honyuan's expression was especially dark. Jingwan snorted. When Master Liaochen said that a certain someone had looked like he wanted to kill someone, unlike normal situations, he had suppressed his anger. It was quite amusing to think about it. If she didn't know that Master Liaochen wasn't the type to play around with people, she would have thought that Master Liaochen was deliberately provoking her. Jingwan was stunned at first, but quickly understood that there were many kinds of affinity. If Jingwan had an affinity with Buddhism to the point of becoming a monk, Master Liaochen wouldn't have said anything. If Yuan isn't happy, why did he ask me to accept the gift? Li Hongyuan glanced at her coldly without a word. Jingwan knew that even if her husband knew what was going on, he was really angry. She hurried to pacify him. She kissed and hugged him for a long time before smoothing out his hair. But it was over. Jingwan probably knew that this was something that he couldn't tell her. Well, Jingwan didn't think much of it when it happened 1 or 2 times. But when it happened a little more, she still felt a little displeased. But as long as it didn't have anything to do with mistresses, Jingwan felt that she should be more forgiving. Li Hongyuan's quick return was naturally surprising. Others had no right to ask, but Lu Chengdi's curiosity could be satisfied. He'd summoned his son to him and was so eager to leave the capital. How could it be that he didn't even have a day? Tell me, what's going on? Li Hongyuan was expressionless. What else could it be? It's too cold. There's nothing in that lousy place, so of course I came back. What a stubborn and powerful reason. Lu Chengdi only wanted a facepalm. Your mother, I've done what I should do. Lu Chengdi nodded. Okay, go back to your residence and shut yourself in for a few days. After all, his son had gone to White Dragon Temple to pray for him. How could he have prayed for him so quickly? If he didn't punish him, where would his father's dignity be? Of course, even if the world knew that he was just trying to save face, he still had to do it. This was exactly what Li Hongyuan wanted. He could arrange those things. Of course, even if he shut himself in to reflect on his mistakes, Li Hongyuan wouldn't let down his guard against some people who were still in the capital. He continued to hold banquets like this every day, whether it was to build relationships or exchange benefits. He just wanted to make the best use of this last bit of time. As for some quick and short information exchanges that even brushed past each other, they were everywhere. During these few days, the envoys of various countries, whether they had achieved their goals or not, began to leave Chiyuan City one after another. Lu Chengdi was also generous. Basically, every country gave a corresponding generous gift. Of course, whether these gifts were satisfactory or not was another matter. For example, if they wanted to get a book on arts and agriculture, he would give them a bunch of books. There were countless similar gifts. These were all made by Luo Peishan, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, who was temporarily the minister of the Ministry of Rights. When he did this, many people looked at Luo Peishan with admiration. Yes, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, it was better not to offend him if possible. Even Lu Chengdi looked at Lord Luo for a long time and then praised him with a very complicated well done. He sincerely thought that it was good, but his heart was complicated. In the end, he, the boss of Chiyuan, had to take the blame. In the hearts of the envoys, Lu Chengdi had already been labeled as a sinister, cunning, hypocrite, and so on. Lord Luo stroked his beard and smiled, but didn't say anything. Could he say that these were all his dear granddaughter's ideas? According to his granddaughter, most of the countries were not affiliated with his country. Could it be that she wanted to bring back mountains of gold and silver with just a few gifts? She even wanted to fulfill her wish and bring back the skills? How shameless was she? https://11/11807/9454803. Mobile Edition. Chapter 437. However, when Song Jin left, Jingwan even went to send him off. Jingwan had dealings with Song Jin's people before, so it wasn't a secret. As long as one wanted to know, they would naturally know. Because of this relationship, among the gifts that she chose for Song Jin, there were more genuine goods. Luo Darren did it righteously and confidently. Of course, it wouldn't be too obvious. If others really wanted to nitpick, they wouldn't be able to find fault with it. Jingwan also personally prepared a gift. She definitely brought a lot of personal goods. However, she must have thought about it over and over again. After choosing it, she also showed it to Li Hongyuan. There was absolutely nothing that she couldn't give. Jin Qinhuang was still grounded. After Jingwan sent him back to the city, she saw the carriage of the former Wei Crown Prince. Because the carriage she was sitting in was more ordinary, the other party didn't notice her. Jingwan naturally didn't have any expression. The half-closed curtain was still hanging. As for whether she had any thoughts in her heart, there was no way to know. Speaking of which, There were only two countries left in the capital of Qi Yuan. One was the former Wei, and the other was the West Xiongnu. The people of these two countries, ever since Emperor Lu Cheng's birthday, could be said to have been tearing at each other. In terms of eloquence, the former Wei, who was in the same vein as the Qi Yuan, would definitely scold the West Xiongnu like dogs. However, in terms of individual strength, the fists of the West Xiongnu people were definitely harder. Moreover, most of these people had an upright temperament and didn't understand the meaning of moderation. Since they couldn't win in words, then they would unceremoniously use their fists. At this time, they didn't care about diplomatic relations. They prepared to give the princess of the West Xiongnu people, but in the end, they sent her to the bed of the emperor of Qi Yuan. They had already shed all pretense of cordiality. Because of the West Xiongnu people who didn't play by the rules, the former Wei crown prince could be said to have been badly battered recently. Of course, there were still some things that were slightly comforting. Because the West Xiongnu people refused to let go of this matter, naturally they couldn't resolve it clearly. However, now that there were only two countries left, they couldn't just stay here and not leave. Therefore, if they wanted to continue the war, they could only return to their respective countries and then continue the war through letters of credence. It was impossible to fight with live ammunition because the two countries weren't adjacent. The Qi Yuan wouldn't let them pass, and other small countries wouldn't foolishly let them pass. Wouldn't that be the same as inviting a wolf into the house? Therefore, no matter how fierce the quarrel was, it could only be a war of words, and the West Xiongnu people were destined to lose. Therefore, although the former Wei crown prince was mentally exhausted, he wasn't too worried when he returned. After all, it wasn't particularly difficult to resolve this matter. What he needed to do now was to meet his good sister who had become consort Xian of the Qi Yuan and get the most important bargaining chip to shake the crown prince of Great Wei. Although his sister didn't get what she wanted in the end, she stayed in the Qi Yuan and was far away from the abyss of suffering she imagined. In the end, it was he who held her in the palm of his hand. During this period of time, because the several empresses and consorts in the imperial harem didn't have time to pay attention to her, and Emperor Lu Chengdi was busy. When he had nothing to do, he would pretend to be a love saint in front of the portrait of the imperial Gui Fei. When he slept, he would hug it. This person, Consort Wei Xian, was probably forgotten by him. In addition, he didn't like Consort Wei Xian in the first place, so naturally, he didn't even see her once. If the emperor didn't pay attention to an imperial consort, even if she held the high position of Consort Xian, no other imperial consort would be willing to find a sense of existence. Moreover, now that there was no one in charge in the imperial harem, those in the imperial harem were all ready to make trouble. In the past, they didn't have the opportunity and didn't even think about it. Now it was different. If they didn't seize the opportunity, they would be letting themselves down and have even less time. In addition, in the end, she was the princess of the former Wei. The people of the former Wei hadn't left yet, so they definitely wouldn't be harsh on her in terms of food and clothing. Therefore, during this period of time, Consort Wei Xian's life was actually not bad. Her resentment and unwillingness for not being able to marry into Jin Xinwang Fu had disappeared a lot. However, because she couldn't get it, her heart only wanted it even more. Moreover, there were a few women who didn't admire handsome men in their youth and were willing to dedicate themselves to an old man, especially a proud and conceited person like Princess Yining. Therefore, the thorn in her heart could never be removed. Moreover, the better the days were, the stronger this mentality would be. It was hard to say when it would explode. The former Wei eldest prince wanted to see Consort Wei Xian before leaving. It was a reasonable request, so Lu Chengdi agreed without much thought. Previously, Consort Wei Xian had suffered under the hands of her elder brother. This time, she completely put on airs. After all, she was now Lu Chengdi's consort Wei, and her elder brother was just a prince of the Wei dynasty. They weren't on the same level at all. Therefore, she sat on the main seat, casually eating melon seeds. When she saw the eldest prince come in, she just raised her eyelids and glanced at him without saying a word. The former Wei eldest prince knew what was going on, but it didn't matter. No matter what this imperial sister's attitude was, there were some things that couldn't be changed. Even if she sat in her current position, it wouldn't be difficult to pull her down. Greetings to Qi Yuan's consort, Xian Yangyang. In order to achieve his goal, he didn't mind at all. Consort Wei Xian's heart was both happy and unhappy. She was happy because this imperial brother also had this day. She was unhappy because the other party was too straightforward. Moreover, as a result, she had no reason to flare up. However, Consort Wei still didn't want to tell him some things so easily. Although the final result would be the same, she could not say it. The former Wei eldest prince dawdled for a long time at Consort Wei's place. When he left, his mood was very good. Obviously, what he got was not as simple as a few words. He went to see Lu Qingdi and said a lot of words, asking Lu Qingdi to take care of Consort Wei and so on. In the end, he said goodbye. The people of the former Wei left the capital the next day, followed by the people of the West Xiongnu. However, before they left Qi Yuan's capital, Jin Xinwang Fu exploded. Because Jin Xinwang inexplicably fell into a coma, Gong Jiu, who had already returned to the Fu, was helpless and couldn't find the reason. https://11/11807/9454804. Chapter 438. However, even if Lu Qingdi was the emperor and had the imperial qi, it was useless at this time. Other than being angry and furious, he was still doing these things. Although he said that he would kill all the imperial physicians, it was just a joke. In fact, it was useless to kill them. At this time, no one could persuade him. Only Jing Wan's words worked. Naturally, she had to persuade him. Although this was part of the plan, when Li Honyuan really fell into a deep sleep for over 40 hours, even if there were no outsiders and they couldn't wake him up, Jing Wan still panicked. At one point, she regretted making such a suggestion. She didn't think that it was just a show, but it was so realistic. As for the culprit, Gong Jiu, she naturally didn't have a good expression. However, Jing Wan was still rational. Gong Jiu was only following orders, and she shouldn't vent her anger on him. However, Jing Wan didn't know that this would be the result. Logically speaking, her husband shouldn't have hidden it from her. So, was there a small problem, or was it Gong Jiu who did it? Jing Wan couldn't be blamed for being suspicious of Li Hongyuan's confidence. After all, people's hearts were the most difficult to control. There were many cases of betrayal by confidence. Therefore, even if she didn't vent her anger on Gong Jiu, she still treated Gong Jiu coldly for the time being. There were only a few people who knew about this. At this time, they didn't dare to plead for Gong Jiu because things seemed to be a little different for what they expected. They also believed in Gong Jiu. However, some things couldn't be trusted. Gong Jiu was also clear about this point, so he had no complaints in his heart. However, it was more or less a little bitter. This time, there was a little accident. The situation was not so serious. In the evening, he would light a special incense, and the master should wake up. The problem now was that it was useless. He had also checked repeatedly, but he still could not find the problem. Therefore, compared to those messy emotions, he wanted to find out the reason as soon as possible. However, fortunately, the master's current situation was not out of control, but he might sleep for a longer time. Gong Jiu explained to Jing Wan. Jing Wan naturally couldn't dispel her suspicions. If Wang Ye continues to sleep like this without eating or drinking, will there be any problems with his body? Don't worry, Wang Fei. Even if Wang Ye sleeps for half a month, he will at most lose some weight. Nothing will happen to him. It turned out that his physiological functions had also been reduced. That was still good. Otherwise, in this era where there was no way to get nutrient fluids, he would definitely fall asleep and die if he couldn't wake up. When your highness wakes up, you can go and receive your punishment. Yes. Jing Wan was a little relieved, but she also secretly decided that this kind of thing would not happen a second time. It was only at this moment that Jing Wan came to her senses. Logically speaking, a person like her husband would never easily place his life in the hands of others. Even if this person was his confidant, the reason why he agreed to it was entirely because of her. He had absolute trust in him. Because of Jin Qin Wang's sudden collapse, there was also instability in the Wang Fu. With all these, Jingwan was very clear that she must stabilize herself. Her own husband made such a choice at this time. It was not necessarily to create an opportunity for her to completely stand up. How could she fail to live up to his good intentions? Although ever since they got married, because of his clear attitude, the entire Wang Fu and even his subordinates were all respectful to her, basically without any factor of her own. If he changed his attitude at this time, then 100% the people below would immediately turn hostile. Jingwan used to think that it was nothing. She herself was also ambitious and wanted to stand side by side with him. It was just that, in the end, her awareness was still not enough. Just in these 2 short days, she knew that this was not possible. She could rely on him because their hearts were connected. She didn't mind. But when he was not here, if she didn't have enough authority, 8 or 9 out of 10 things would happen. Don't say that he would never not be by her side. In the current situation, no one could say this sentence with certainty. Therefore, Jingwan, for the first time, made a ruthless move. She tidied up the servants who were secretly gossiping and ordered that everything in the Wang Fu would continue as usual. What should be done should be done. If there were any mistakes, then from top to bottom, there would be no leniency. It had to be said that it was indeed very useful. At least the panic on the surface disappeared without a trace. Lu Qingdi saw the green shadows around her eyes. She, who had always been radiant, couldn't hide her tiredness. He knew that she must not be having a good time. But now, she forced herself to appease him. Because he loved the house, he loved the crow. And also because Jingwan gave him that painting, so he really doted on Jingwan a bit. Laolu's wife, don't worry too much. As you said, nothing will happen to you on Earth. Everyone says that a scourge lives for 1,000 years. This evil creature is reckoned that even the king of hell wouldn't dare to accept him. You have to take care of yourself. Don't wait until he wakes up, and then you collapse. At that time, he will be heartbroken. Jingwan forced a smile and nodded. This was not a pretense. Because there was an unknown situation, it would be a lie not to be worried. Imperial Father, what should we do now? Should we invite a doctor from the common people to take a look? It seemed that she was a little desperate. Lu Qingdi pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement, because he also knew that there were some experts among the common people. Later, he had someone put up the imperial notice and even sent it to the various prefectures. Jingwan wanted to say, what's the use of this? Looking for people from so far away, even if they really found them, by the time they rushed to the capital, it would already be too late. However, this was not useless. It was not impossible to use this to build momentum. Don't forget, their ultimate goal was to open an altar for the people to pray for blessings. This time, it was just laying the groundwork. Lu Qingdi stayed in Jinqin Wang Fu for a whole day. However, he still had a lot of state affairs to deal with. It was impossible for him to stay in the Qin Wang Fu all the time. He could only return to the palace first. Before leaving, he ordered a group of waste imperial physicians to stay in Jinqin Wang Fu. Even if they were useless, they should stay. If Jinqin Wang was fine, then forget it. If he died, then they would die. Lu Qingdi's departure did not mean that Jinqin Wang Fu was quiet. Other people did not dare to gather in Jinqin Wang Fu. Li Hongyuan's brothers and sisters, as well as his uncles and cousins, could not be ignored. Moreover, because of their relationship with Lu Qingdi, they had to show extra concern. In any case, the living king of hell was also unconscious, so what was there to be afraid of? Therefore, Jinqin Wang Fu could be said to be unprecedentedly lively. Even the Gong Prince, who had been ruthlessly tidied up by Li Hongyuan at Lu Qingdi's birthday banquet, completely disregarded the former enmity at this time, acting like a good elder brother who was worried about his younger brother. If the gloating in his eyes could be restrained a little, then it would be more like it. How many of these people were truly worried about Li Hongyuan? Probably not even one. Jingwan was incomparably annoyed. These people probably wished that the living king of hell would never wake up. After all, this time, it had nothing to do with them. Even if he died, Lu Qingdi would not vent his anger on them. Then, she unceremoniously ordered them to leave. Her attitude was strong, and she did not give them any face. Li Hongyuan style, not to say that she displayed 100%, but at least 70 to 80%. Some people were naturally unhappy, but Jingwan did not care at all. To be honest, she was someone who even dared to refute Prince Rue and Prince Kong. At this time, she did not care whether these people were happy or not. Moreover, her identity was also there. These people, there were not many who could make her lower her head. Moreover, the living king of Hell's consort, if she lowered her head to others, wouldn't that be losing face for her own husband? Jingwan's attitude was unyielding, so these people could not say anything more. Instead, they comforted her with kind words. After sending these people away, Jingwan directly closed the door and declined the guests. Afterwards, people came one after another to deliver things, but they were very conscious not to pay a visit, including the Luo family. Of course, in order to prevent her grandparents from worrying, Jingwan had actually greeted them. Although her words were not clear, they were naturally clear. These two elders were extremely wise people. She believed that they would certainly understand her meaning, and there was no need to worry that they would drop the ball. After that, it continued for 3 days, and there were people who revealed the imperial list. However, after the people of Jin Xinhuang, Fu dealt with the people who were initially blinded by the high bounty and didn't know their own worth. No one dared to randomly reveal it. Jingwan could not sit still. If she could wake up, she would not mind waiting for a few more days, but now she absolutely could not wait any longer. https://11/11807/9473146. Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. Chapter 439. Begin the next step. Let Great Master Liao Chun enter the capital as soon as possible. When Jingwan said this, there was an element of command in her tone. This kind of subtle change, she didn't notice it herself, but the people around her did. However, they didn't say anything. In fact, they had thought that this day would come a long time ago. To invite Great Master Liao Chun into the capital, of course, it couldn't be Jin Xinhuang Fu's people. It had to be Lu Qingdi. Lu Qingdi had been in a coma for 5 days because of his beloved son, and there was no sign of him getting better. This was definitely unprecedented irritation. Even the slightest thing could make him explode. It was even more terrifying than the incident in Jiangnan. After all, at that time, some old officials could still say something. This time, even people like Ruan Rue Zhong didn't dare to speak. In this kind of situation, if he intentionally or unintentionally heard the words Great Master Liao Chun, he would definitely invite someone immediately. It was possible that he would personally come. In fact, this was indeed the case. This time, there was no pretense. It was directly the Grand Secretary Ruan Rue Zhong who spoke. Lu Qingdi's face was suddenly enlightened. Why didn't Jin think of it? Why didn't I think of it? Beloved Minister Ruan, by Long Temple will have to trouble you. Forget it, come. Let Kong Qinhuang, Rue Qinhuang, and Gong Qinhuang come see Jin immediately. If Minister Ruan were to go, her sincerity would be enough. However, she was already so old and the weather was so cold. If something were to happen, not only would it delay her son's illness, it would also cause the Grand Secretary to be injured. It was better for young people to go. Sending her 3 sons, who were the last of her sons, would be even more sincere. It would only be slightly worse than her going personally. Speaking of which, although Great Master Liao Chun was an expert, his nature was amiable and approachable. As long as it didn't offend his taboo, he would generally give face. Based on this, Lu Qingdi wasn't afraid that he wouldn't be able to invite him. Being summoned by Laozi, the 3 naturally came especially quickly, especially Prince Rue. After all, he was stripped of his position in the Ministry of Personnel. Recently, he was very idle and naturally received more ridicule. He was naturally eager to get out of the current situation. In any case, he didn't have anything to do and couldn't make any mistakes. His speed wasn't just for show. After knowing why Lu Qingdi was looking for them, the 3 princes tried very hard to keep their faces straight so that their expressions would not crack. Sure enough, That bastard was their father's real son, and they were all picked up from the outside, right? What's wrong? Aren't you happy to make a trip to White Dragon Temple? Bastards, that's your younger brother. I'm not dead yet. One by one, Lu Qingdi scolded the three princes to their faces. They were simply unfilial and cold-hearted. What he meant was that he wished he could strangle them to death when they were born so that they wouldn't be such bastards now. The three of them didn't say anything. It was just that they didn't restrain their expressions. Yet, they were scolded like this in front of several important officials. What would they think? However, at this moment, they didn't have time to think so much. They hurriedly kowtowed and begged for their father's forgiveness. They absolutely didn't have any bad intentions. Sixth brother was ill, and they were also very anxious. They wished they could take his place. If they could do something for sixth brother, they would be willing to sacrifice their lives. Lu Qingdi sneered. Get lost. The three princes hurriedly left, not daring to delay. None of these bastards are satisfying. The longer they live, the worse they get. Lu Qingdi complained to his officials helplessly. What could the officials say? The emperor could criticize and scold his own son, but they couldn't say anything bad about them. It wasn't just because of their noble status. In fact, everyone's heart was the same. Their own children could do whatever they wanted, but others couldn't. In this situation, they naturally had to console them. Outside the door, the three princes heard everything clearly. Their faces were like pallets, but they didn't dare say a word. They had to hurry to White Dragon Temple to invite Master Liaochen. They also had to pray that Master Liaochen was there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to invite him back. They didn't need to prepare any carriages. They spurred their horses to gallop to White Dragon Temple, cutting the time to a quarter. Fortunately, it hadn't snowed in the past few days. If the snow had blocked the road, they would have suffered. Master Liaochen was there. Phew! They heaved a huge sigh of relief. After stating their intentions, they waited for Master Liaochen's reply. Master Liaochen knocked on his wooden fish and twirled his prayer beads, unhurriedly reciting sutras. The faint scent of sandalwood wafted through the air. It should have been a peaceful place to calm their hearts, but the three princes couldn't calm down. Their hearts were restless and impatient. The knocking of the wooden fish was like knocking on their hearts. They were terribly anxious and uncomfortable, but they didn't dare make a sound. After 2 hours, Master Liaochen finally stopped. He met the three princes' expectant gazes. Amitabha, since that's the case, this humble monk will accompany the three princes. Many thanks, Master. The three princes were overjoyed. See, this was the difference in treatment. Think about Li Hongyuan's attitude in front of Master Liaochen. Although he was usually respectful, he would still threaten him if he didn't agree with him. Compared to these three, he was an absolute boss. Master Liaochen's age couldn't be verified, but he was definitely over 100 years old. He had a longer history than Qi Yuan. Although he often traveled, he looked very healthy. He didn't dare to return to the capital too quickly. The three princes were subconsciously apprehensive. After learning that Master Liaochen had entered the capital, he went directly to Jinqin Wang Fu. Lu Qingdi thought for a moment, changed his clothes, and left the palace again. When Lu Qingdi arrived, Li Hongyuan had been moved from the inner room to the outer room. He was placed on a couch, and everything around him had been moved aside. There was a small table in the middle with an incense burner on it, emitting a special fragrance. Master Liaochen sat on the side with his eyes closed, twirling his prayer beads. Master! Lu Qingdi walked forward and called out in a low voice. Master Liaochen opened his eyes and put his palms together. Amitabha, long live the emperor. Greetings, Master. Lu Qingdi hurriedly returned the greeting. After a pause, he asked, Master, why is Zhen's sixth son unconscious? It's already been 5 or 6 days. Zhen is very worried. Don't worry, Your Majesty. His Highness is fine. It's just that his soul has left his body. When his soul returns, he will naturally wake up. This poor monk has already lit incense for His Highness. When the incense burns out, he should wake up, Master Liaochen said. Lu Qingdi let out a big sigh of relief. So it's like that. It's good that he can wake up. It's good that he can wake up. On the other hand, Jingwan's expression was a little strange. So this senior monk, who was probably one of the best in all the countries, was actually a super swindler? Master, I wonder why Zhen's sixth son's soul left his body for no reason. https://11/11/11807/9490667. Mobile edition. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.